Negro Álvarez en un mano a mano con Roger Steffens. Ahí ya nos vamos comunicando con ellos. Pero bienvenidos a la edición especial por el Día Internacional de la Música. Así es, bienvenidos a una nueva edición de Somos Pelagatos, pero edición deluxe. Vamos a estar hablando con Roger Steffens. ¿Quién es Roger Steffens? Bueno, Roger Steffens es el escritor y biógrafo amigo de Bob Marley. Bob Marley lo llamaba Ras Roja. Y ahora voy a sumar en segunditos nomás a mi compañero Mighty Roots, que se está conectando básicamente. Así que ya lo vamos a recibir. Así que prepárense para una extensa charla, mayoritariamente en inglés. Vamos a traducir un poquito nomás, pero lo queremos hacer amigable para la charla, ¿no? Este señor, este personaje hermoso con el que ya hemos hablado un rato con Mighty Roots, que ahora lo voy a presentar, es alguien bellísimo, hermoso. Así que ahí le doy aire a Mighty y les contamos un poquito de Roger Steffens. Sí, Mighty, ¿cómo va?
Buenas noches, ¿cómo estás, negro?
Bien,
gente
¿vos?
que está ahí conectada. Muy bien, muy bien, muy bien. Escúchame, sabés que estuve viendo un montón de entrevistas con Roger y ahora estoy en una duda de cómo se pronuncia su último nombre, como siempre nos pasa.
Bien, un clásico.
No sé si es Steffens o Steffens. Ahora le vamos a preguntar. Le preguntamos.
Ya entré en calor, ya entré en calor, tengo algunos nervios. Además, vamos a estar regalando un libro oficial. No va a estar firmado porque está en Los Ángeles, ¿no? Mirá, yo casi lo termino. Librazo, espectacular, hermoso, increíble. Te cambia la visión sobre Bob Marley desde la primera página. Tanto que contar, historia oral de Bob Marley. Así que se mete en nuestro Instagram @pelagatosreggae y ahí hay un sorteo donde van a poder ganarse un ejemplar si estás en Argentina, en México o en España. Así que estos 3 países están participando: Argentina, México, Spain. Un golazo, Mighty. Yo estoy motivado,
Está buenísimo lo que lograste, que sea en 3 países en simultáneo, la verdad.
Gracias a Malpaso Editorial y a Mecha, que hizo el contacto. Acá me olvidé de acomodar algunas cositas, así que me voy poniendo más cómodo. Esto del estudio, el home studio, tiene sus vericuetos, ¿viste? Pero bueno, qué lindo momento. En cualquier momento se conecta Roger y arrancamos a charlar sobre Bob Marley, ¿no? El historiador oficial de Bob Marley, amigo, lo conoció, lo trató, lo entrevistó.
Hay muchas cosas con este personaje. Él es escritor, fotógrafo, orador,
Sí.
poeta, amante del reggae music, como ya saben, pero también ha hecho una gran investigación en la música del África.
Bien.
Por la música del África, y además de ser un archivador, porque su casa son los Reggae Archives, los archivos del reggae. Es el museo más extenso y completo del reggae en el planeta. Es la casa de él. Creo que le dedicó más de 7, 8 habitaciones de la casa a la cantidad de cosas que tiene, que no son solamente discos, libros, discos originales. Tiene también camisetas, películas, grabaciones originales de Reggae Sunsplash. Ha viajado año tras año a Jamaica. Le vamos a preguntar que nos cuente.
Esto viene extenso, ¿no? Nos vamos a dar el lujo de hablar con alguien que capaz que es no un mentor porque recién nos conocemos, pero es alguien a quien admiramos. Su trabajo nos refleja, nos motiva. Es alguien a tener en cuenta, es una voz con peso en el mundo del reggae. No es que es un X que escribió un libro y no sé qué. El libro tiene 75 entrevistas diferentes. Tiene con Peter Tosh, con Bunny Wailer, con Bob Marley, tiene con Rita Marley, con Cedella Booker, con Neville Garrick, que era el director artístico de Marley, con Coxon Dodd. ¿Quién más? Mighty. O sea, la lista es interminable.
No, la tengo acá. Te iba a decir otra cosa, pero para que tengo un montón de cosas sobre la mesa. Pero esperá que acá está la lista.
Mirá que Roger está en espera, ¿eh? Ya le abro el canal, ¿no? ¿Qué decís?
Dame un segundo que te digo.
Roger nos está esperando, ¿eh? Acá Claudia Urquiza cuenta que se compró unos lentes para leer el libro. Imagínate.
Están todos los músicos que lo acompañaron a Bob, todos los precursores de los Wailers, de la primer ola, o sea,
Sí.
la primer formación de los Wailers, de los Wailing Wailers. Un montón de músicos, DJs de radio, productores de los sellos discográficos en los que trabajó desde, bueno, mejor dicho, el que faltó es Lee Perry. Le podemos preguntar también por qué con Lee Perry no logró. Pero bueno, no lo hagamos esperar, vamos para adelante. Vamos a hablar mucho en inglés, pero vamos a tener el trabajo de cuando lo volvamos a publicar, todo subtitulado porque no tiene desperdicio.
Arrancamos entonces con Roger Steffens, lo admitimos, le damos el ok y ya lo tenemos, prepárense para alguien hermoso, ¿eh? Así lo podemos clasificar. How are you, Roger? How are you, Roger?
Hi, I thought we were going to have a different code to get into this, but here we are.
Here we are. Thank you very much for having us. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Yes, excuse me that I didn't tell you it was the same code. I'm sorry, Roger. We had the same code.
Okay, well, here we are. Soon come.
Soon come. Yes. Well, here we have your book, a great work from the start to the end, with Linton Kwesi Johnson. I love Linton, his music. So it starts with fire, with Linton Kwesi Johnson. Is your friend Linton?
I've known Linton for almost 40 years.
Whoa.
He's a wonderful guy. He's a little eccentric. You may have seen a talk that we did together in London 3 years ago that's on the internet at a place called the Tabernacle in Notting Hill. And it was for the British publication of the book. And we were in the green room before the evening began. And I asked him to sign the book because he wrote the introduction to the book.
Yes.
And he said, no.
Why?
What? No, what do you mean no? He says, it's your book, not my book. I said, your name's on the cover, Linton. It's our book. No, it's your book. Wouldn't sign it. There you go, right?
Yes.
And afterward, when people were all lined up to have me sign their books, 3 people came up with copies of the book that Linton had signed for them.
No, come on.
So I have to kid him about that when I see him, you know. It was strange because I collect autographs and that was very precious to me. I asked him initially if he would write the introduction to the book when we were at a festival in France called Sunska.
Yes.
And he said, I don't do those things. And in 2015, when I thought I had finally finished the book after 13 years of work on it, I sent him the manuscript. And he wrote back and he said, well, this has a chance to be something of historic significance, so I'll do it. and then my editor died. And the new editor completely restructured the book. And so I had to kind of start from the beginning again. But he saved it. He turned it into something very special. And I have to pay public homage to Tom Mayer, because Tom really knew the subject. He had a ska band in New York in the early part of this century. And he gave me a different kind of format, the classic oral history format. My original conception of the book was to take 110 interviews that I had done beginning in 79 with Peter and Bob, and published the raw transcripts of every interview I did with anyone who knew Bob, so that it would be a compendium of the oral history firsthand for historians. And it was not as readable as the current version of the book. And what I like about the new version, the final version, is that there's a lot of contradictions in there.
Yes.
And that's why the epigram for the book at the beginning is, there are no facts in Jamaica, only versions.
Yeah. But it's incredible. Bueno, a la gente le contamos que traducimos un poquito. We translate a little. Hablábamos de Linton Kwesi Johnson, que hizo la apertura del libro, ¿no? Que al principio le dijo, Roger le pidió que se lo firme en una firma de libros y Linton le dijo, no, es tu libro, no te lo voy a firmar. Y después le apareció otra gente con el libro firmado por Linton Kwesi Johnson. Así que está ahí, que tiene que juntarse con Linton a poner las cosas claras. Después contó que cuando le pidió que escriba eso, Linton le dijo que no. Y después cuando le mandó el manuscrito, Linton se lo escribió y le dijo, esto va a ser algo grosso. Y después se le murió el editor y el editor nuevo le cambió todo el libro y quedó esta belleza que mezcla todas las entrevistas cuando él al principio había decidido ponerlas todas juntas, ¿no? La primera entrevista, la segunda entrevista, la tercera, y en este libro están todas entremezcladas cronológicamente con la vida de Bob.
Marco, my tam is off to you. I didn't realize you were going to be translating. I will speak in smaller chunks.
No,
to give you a chance.
So much people here sending regards. Alma Reggae, Cecilia, Jessica, Seba, Hugo, Fer, Sabinita, Víctor, Mauro, Alejandra, Matías, y bueno. But we can talk in English and then YouTube will translate automatically.
Roger, because your computer died while you were writing the first copy, right?
Took everything, all my notes, my transcripts, everything. And it was so disheartening that for the next 2 years, I didn't do any work on it at all. I just couldn't face it. And then the editor called and said, "Where's my book?"
And you have
Do you need to translate that?
You have to to rewrite it all from the start, from the beginning. Whoa. Hard work.
I hate computers.
So
I call them poisonal confusers.
Poisonal confused.
Yeah, not personal computers, poisonal confusers. I think Peter would have called it that too.
I say the play words. So yeah. Roger, can you give us a little background before we get into your life in reggae and your passion with this music and this the history of Jamaica? You began writing. You're a poet, a writer before being a photographer, before traveling to Vietnam. Tell us a little background, if you can.
Well, you know, people have been asking me that kind of question now for a while, so it's made me rethink my life. I'm 78. I'm first generation rock and roll. I was 12 years old in 1954 when Rock Around the Clock was released and #1 in America, kind of the birth of rock and roll. I grew up in New York City, and Alan Freed, the king of rock and roll, was my local DJ, and I went to his shows. My very first rock and roll show, 1957, Fats Domino, Jerry Lee Lewis, Teenage Everly Brothers, Buddy Holly and the Crickets, Frankie Lyman, 10 other acts, all for $2.50. Wow. You can't even buy a bottle of water now for $2.50. And but you know, when I think about my writing, almost from the very start of my being able to write, I was a writer. When I was six years old, I got a fake typewriter for Christmas. It was a little toy, and it had a dial, and you turned it to the letter, and then you pressed a key, and that letter would print, and then you turned it to the next letter, pressed the key. And I used to make up neighborhood newspapers and sell them for 5 cents.
How old were you?
6 years old.
Oh,
and I even drew the editorial cartoons by hand. So I've always, I was an early reader. I think from about 4.5, I basically taught myself to read. So I'm a voracious reader to this day, and a writer. So all through school, I edited the grade school newspaper and the high school yearbook and the college newspaper, and so I loved interviewing people. The first person I ever interviewed on the radio was the Nigerian drummer Michael Babatunde Olatunji, who made a fantastic record that's never been out of print since 1958 called Drums of Passion. And we were friends for the rest of his life. So I've been interested in African ethnic music, Black music, my entire life. My parents couldn't figure me out because, on Sunday mornings, being Catholic, we were getting ready to go to Mass, but I had the radio turned to the Black stations where the Baptist church choirs were singing on Sunday mornings. And that's what I was listening to on the way to the Catholic Mass. And my parents couldn't figure that out. And then when I brought Little Richard records home, it's the only time I ever heard my mother swear, "Turn off that goddamn booga wooga jungle music." And years later, I got to interview Little Richard. And I told him that story, and he just howled. "Oh, I still loves that booga wooga jungle music, Roger."
I have a surprise for you, Roger. Are you ready? Here it's coming. Here it's coming. It's a surprise. Here is coming. Here is coming. We have a friend, a mutual friend, and he's Hernan Camel Sforzini is joining the meeting for a while to say hello.
He knows this room. Hey, Hernan! What happened, brother? Can't hear you.
A ver.
There you are.
¿Está Camel ahí? Ahí está. Camel, ¿nos escuchas?
Ahí va, ahí va.
You've been in this room. Welcome back.
Yeah.
Nice.
How are you, Roger?
Yeah, what a great album, and Grammy-nominated album, one of the first foreign-produced albums ever to be nominated. You should have won.
Yes, she should won.
I'm going to send you soon the dub battle for the prologue.
Great, great.
Just waiting for the cover art for send you all together.
And of course, we might talk about the wonderful liner notes.
Yes.
Yeah.
You wrote at the end of the notes. You wrote that Toots Hibbert. You said, "Love is the every only God, and love is perfect. Who else could have that worthy title but Toots Hibbert?" Can you share with us something about Toots Hibbert, Roger?
I'm doing an early morning broadcast in New York City tomorrow at 7 a.m. that's dedicated to Toots.
Nice.
And so I've been watching all kinds of things on the internet and going. I have a huge file. It's about that thick of clippings and interviews with Toots, and I had the great honor in 2007 of interviewing Toots for a Living Legend series that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland was doing. And they asked me to interview Toots for it. And it's 2 hours long, and he had such a phenomenal life that at the end of 2 hours, we only got to 1969.
What?
And that was the night he admitted to the audience that 5446 wasn't his number.
Oh.
He never had no number. He just made it up. And the audience gasped. And a couple of months later, I emceed his show in Hollywood at the House of Blues. And he had the old band, the original band with him, with all the classic Jamaican musicians in it, guys who've played that song 5,000 times, right? So they're all behind me on stage. And I said to the audience, by the way, at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that night, Toots admitted that 5446 wasn't his number. He just made it up. And the band goes, what? Blood clot. So me never know. What?
Nobody knew.
Nobody knew. None of them. It's so Jamaican.
So Jamaican.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And you know, I'm going over the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame interview. It's on video. And his first record for Cox and Dodd, his entire pay was 3 patties.
Oh,
and it turned out they came from a company that was put out of business because they discovered that the filling of the patties was rat meat.
No.
So his first record, he made 3 rat patties.
You meet Cox and Dodd, Roger.
Yeah.
It's
many times.
It was like it's in the book. It was so hard. So it was. I don't know how to say it in English, pero era tan garca, era tan.
Like he's trying to. What my partner is trying to ask you is it true that Coxon was not fair to the musicians in a business wise? Or what can you say about that time?
So we're sitting at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I brought a stack of Toots singles with me. And I wanted to play them. And every time I went to put the single on the record player, he says, don't play that. Don't play that, Toots? Why? You never get paid. Then I pull another one out. No, don't play that one. You never got paid. All those years he worked for Coxon, he never made any money at all. But he loved Coxon, and he kept talking about what a great guy Coxon was, except he never paid me.
Okay.
Do you think that the image of the producer, like in the Harder They Come movie, is that the image, or is it too much? It's just a movie.
That image is not only historically accurate, it is currently accurate to this day. Yeah. And so one night, one afternoon on my radio show, which was on 4 hours every Sunday afternoon here in LA, I had Bob Andy and Alton Ellis together. And
yeah, that is a good thing. That I was going to tell you that say that thing. Go on.
So Alton Ellis is just death on Coxon. He's cursing him out. That terrible man. He never paid me. He ripped me off. He's just, I don't even want to talk about him. He's an awful man. And Bob Andy is going, now, Alton, come on, man. I was there too. You know, I feel a little abused, but look, he gave you a career. He put your image out in the public. He put your best music out for people to hear. No, you can't say that. That man ripped me off. He ripped us all off. That's an SOB, awful man. And after the show was over, I go outside to the parking lot, and Alton and Bob are clapping hands, and they're laughing like hell. And I go, what are you laughing at? And Bob Andy says, well, last night we were together on the radio in San Francisco, only it was me cursing out Coxon, and it was Alton saying, oh, no, brother, you got to cut some slack. He's okay. Don't say bad things about Coxon. Again, so Jamaican. Jamaicans love to argue whatever side the other guy is not arguing. It's a contentious way of life, and it's what's called reasoning in Jamaica. but there is an inconsistency to it.
Hagamos la traducción para el público, ¿no?
Bueno,
ahí lo que decía Roger es que cuando él tenía su programa de radio, un día entrevista juntos a Alton Ellis y a Bob Andy y les pregunta por Coxsone. Y bueno, y salta Alton Ellis diciendo, no, Coxsone es una mierda, que nos cagó, y Bob Andy decía, no fue tan así, Coxsone fue una buena persona con nosotros. Que Coxsone es una mierda, y Bob Andy diciendo, no, fue un buen tipo. Y cuando terminó el show de radio, los encuentra Roger a Alton Ellis y a Bob Andy en el estacionamiento, ahí cagándose de risa, ¿no? Chocándose las manos, y le dice, che, ¿de qué se están riendo? Y dice, no, pues ayer tuvimos otra entrevista en la radio y nos cambiamos de roles. Y dice, yo hablaba mal de Coxsone y el otro lo defendía.
I like it better when Don Campbell says it.
Now Coxsone is like a father figure too, because when we read your book, you make very clear, I mean, you don't make clear, but Bunny and Beverly Kelso and Cherry Green and many people talk about how important Coxsone was, not only to push the music and bringing classics from the US and make it the new version in ska and rocksteady, but also giving them support and training them in the music business. And so what do you think was Coxsone's role in this era?
Well, Coxsone had great ears. Even though Toots might have something a little different to say, because when he first auditioned for Coxsone says, no, you're too country. You sound too much like country music. Come back in a couple of weeks. And he came back and he sang exactly the same way. And Coxsone said, that's great. Let's make a record.
It depends on the day.
Depends on the day. Of course, Coxsone was a notorious heavy drinker, so his memory is not reliable. And I, as well as everybody else who ever interviewed him, faced a lot of contradictions in what Coxsone had to say. But when all is said and done, Coxsone was one of the top 3 producers in the history of Jamaican music. And to those of us who love roots reggae and rocksteady music, Coxsone was the king of them all. And no matter whether he paid his artists or not, the work stands. The work is out there. The Bob Marley music from Coxsone has never been out of print since 1964. What is that, 56 years now? Toots's early work is still in print from Coxsone.
But why?
The men established a music that was made not island-wide, not even city-wide, but Western Kingston music was introduced to the world and changed the world forever because of people like Coxsone Dodd. So enormous respect to Mr. Dodd.
Bueno, ahí habla un montón sobre Coxsone Dodd, diciendo un enorme respeto porque él cambió el mundo, es uno de los productores que cambió el mundo con el reggae music, básicamente. Así que...
Sí. No, decirle a Don Camel que vamos a traducir todo letra por letra y vamos a subtitular luego, pero habíamos decidido previamente, para no interrumpir el ritmo de la conversación, continuar. So, before Coxsone, Bob Marley recorded 2 singles, One Cup of Coffee and Judge Not for Beverly's recordings. Was it Derrick Morgan, the one who got him to do this? Can you tell us the story, Roger?
There are various people who claim they made the connection. Jimmy was at the label already, Jimmy Cliff. And Jimmy told Coxsone, not Coxsone, but Beverly's about Bob. I would give that to Jimmy Cliff.
Because I read in this box set, in this Bob Marley Tough Gong box set early. It says that it was because of Derek Morgan that he introduced Bob to Leslie Kong.
That's what Derek Morgan said.
Again, just another version.
Just another version. Personally, I think it was Jimmy Cliff. I've talked to enough different people, and I've talked to Jimmy. I mean, I met Jimmy in 1976 on my first trip to Jamaica, right after one of the biggest stars in reggae music picked my pocket in Bob Marley's Tough Gong record shack.
Who picked
Jimmy
your pocket?
Cliff. Jimmy Cliff picked your pocket? Jimmy?
No.
Who?
One of the biggest stars at the time.
Okay.
And if I say that story to a Jamaican, they'll know instantly who it is.
Okay.
But it wouldn't be smart of me to say anything about it publicly.
Okay.
Was that the first time you went to Jamaica? Tell us about that time you first went to Jamaica.
Well, in 73, when I discovered reggae, there was a record store on Fillmore Street in San Francisco called Trenchtown Records, run by a man named Ruel Mills. And he was my first teacher. He was a friend of Bob Marley's. And he had Count Ossie and the Mystic Revelation of Rastafari, Ross Michael and the Sons of Negus, Slim Smith, the Techniques, Joe Higgs. He had just a small collection, but pristine, the best stuff. And I knew there was a wealth of music waiting to be discovered in Jamaica. And I saved up for an entire year. And I brought $400 cash to Jamaica the first week of June 1976 to buy records.
Crazy.
And we got there the week that Michael Manley, the socialist prime minister, declared a national state of emergency, mobilized the army, put tanks on the crossroads all over the island, and locked down the city of Kingston. And we were initially staying in Lucy on the north coast, which was halfway between Negril and Mobay. And everybody said, for God's sake, don't go to Kingston, they'll kill you. And I said, but that's where all the records are. I gotta go to Kingston. So we stayed overnight in Ocho Rios, and the next morning we caught a minibus to Kingston. The streets were deserted, and we got dropped off on a back alley behind Parade, the main square in Kingston. And Bob Marley had a record shack that was about 2 meters wide. And there was a kid in there in a pair of shorts behind a wooden plank. And I said, let me see all your Bob Marley records. And he says, we don't got none.
What?
All right, how about Peter Tosh? We don't got none. I go outside and I look at the sign and it says Tough Gong, Intel Diplo. Come back in. How about Bunny Wailer? He pulls out Search for Love and Arab Oil Weapon. And all of a sudden, I feel something and I look down and there's a hand in my pants. And it's not mine. I've had girlfriends not get that close. And I had the $400 cash in that pocket. And I grabbed the guy's wrist so hard, I probably stopped his blood circulation, and he had to let go of the money. And he pulls out, he's in it's like 103 degrees in Kingston.
Hey,
and he's wearing a 3-piece black suit.
What?
And he opens his jacket up and reaches in and pulls out a 45 record.
Ah, 45 record.
It says, buy my record. And I said, you made that record? Yeah, buy my record. So I got by with $1.25 instead of $400.
Do you have change?
Wait, are you going to say the name of the song?
No.
Okay.
He's still alive. I want to be too.
Okay.
So a young fellow came by and said, listen, you need some protection. And before we knew it, he took us to around the corner to Parade. We went to Joe Gibbs and we went to Randy's. And if you remember that scene in Rockers, where everybody's in there and you're hearing 10 seconds of a record, and then they put another record on for 10 seconds. That was a documentary, man. That's exactly what that place was. It was mobbed with people despite the curfew, and they were all trying to buy records and take them back to the country and sell them out there. And I spent $100 that day on records. And then the fellow who was helping us said, why don't we go to Jimmy's house? Jimmy Cliff? I said, yeah. Okay. Yeah, let's go to Jimmy's house. So he goes outside and he hails a taxi cab, and we get in, my wife and I, and this young fellow, de Brussier, his name was. And he says to the cab driver, Jimmy's house. And in my mind, I'm thinking, this is a setup. He's going to drive down a back alley. He's going to rob us. They'll probably kill us and leave our bodies in the alley. Jimmy's house. And the next thing we know, we're pulling up in front of Jimmy's house. And we go in, and there's Joe Higgs, there's Ernest Ranglin, there's Jimmy Cliff, Hux Brown. I was robbed 20 minutes before, almost, and now I'm with Jimmy Cliff in his house. And
that is Jamaica.
In Jamaica. And
that is Jamaica.
Lady in the Grave Road, isn't it, Hernan? That's Jamaica. And we spent the afternoon with them. They heard I was a Vietnam veteran, and they wanted to know all about the war, and I wanted to know all about the music. And they couldn't have been nicer to these white people who showed up in the middle of the state of emergency, these stupid white people. And Jimmy and I have been friends ever since. Yeah.
Nice friend.
I guess that's a long way round to answer your question, but that was my first experience.
Great story.
Great story. Yes. Incredible. Also, Hernan told us histories that was very equal to yours. Like landing in the house of big stars and knocking the door.
Jamaica is crazy. In one moment you have a gun in your head, and 1 hour later you are with Damian Marley at Tough Gong. Crazy things happen in Jamaica.
Yeah, the worst and the best minutes apart.
I would love to go, but go with Camel and with Roger.
Roger, yeah.
That would be the best, right?
The passport.
Well,
now, you talk about
the innocent.
Claro. You mentioned Vietnam. Let's go back. You went to Vietnam, but you didn't fire one bullet, right? Tell us a little about why. Did you volunteer to go to Vietnam?
Oh, no. I got drafted.
You got drafted.
I was almost 25 when I got drafted. If you made it to 26, they wouldn't draft you. But in 1967, they sent over 500,000 troops, and they were drafting everybody who wasn't blind or lame. And I got caught. And I was raised Catholic. I went to 15 years of Catholic
school
miseducation. I voted for Barry Goldwater, the conservative, from my first presidential election in 1964. I fell for all that. I didn't know anything else. I fell for all that propaganda, all that brainwashing. And I got my draft notice. I was artist in residence at a Catholic woman's college, 750 Catholic girls, and Roger. Talk about going from heaven to hell in the space of a day. And I got my draft notice. So I was in St. Louis, And I went to the local recruiters and I said, look, I'm an actor, I'm a radio broadcaster. What can you do for me? Because I don't want to go to Vietnam. And they said, well, we have no stations in Vietnam, but we'll send you into the Army Radio and Television Department if you sign up for an extra year, for 3 years instead of 2. Because if you go in for those 2 years, they'll do whatever they want with you, and they need infantrymen, and I don't want to go kill nobody. So I signed up for an extra year, and right after basic training, they sent me to a little fort in Indiana to become a stenographer.
What is that?
Shorthand, somebody who takes shorthand, types letters. And I said, hey, I didn't sign up for an extra year of my whole life to be a typewriter guy. Oh, no, you're ours. Once you're ours, we can do whatever we damn well please with you. But ironically, it happened to be the same small fort where the Defense Radio and Television School was that I should have been sent to. And a friendly sergeant got me transferred into the program. And it was the best education I've ever had in my life. We learned every position in a radio and television station: cameraman, tape editor, on-air personality, producer, director, writer, everything. And at the end of each week, if you didn't pass the tests, they sent you to Vietnam. Oh. So you had a powerful incentive to do well in class. And I was the honor graduate. And my orders were to go to Ethiopia.
No, really?
Ethiopia, to Eritrea, which was in rebellion against Selassie's government, to run a helicopter television station. And the last week of class, everyone's orders were canceled, and we were sent off to the Green Berets at the JFK Special Warfare Center in North Carolina into psychological operations, PSYOPs, which is propaganda warfare. And they trained us with Nazi films. Wow. I swear to God. The first class was the 4-hour uncut version of Leni Riefenstahl's Nuremberg rally film, Triumph of the Will. First class, all 4 hours. Last class, 3 weeks later, they repeated all 4 hours of Triumph of the Will and said, go to Vietnam now, emulate this, and win the hearts and minds of the Vietnamese people. And off I was sent to Vietnam 3 months before the Tet Offensive. So luckily, I never fired a shot. That's another whole story. I started a refugee campaign that raised 100 tons of food and clothing. And the colonel gave me autonomy to go anywhere in the country, work on any project I wanted, as long as I took pictures. So I had free film and developing for the next 2 years and never fired a shot. Brought medical and dental and food and clothing to people from the DMZ all the way to the Delta. So and then I came home and lectured against the war for an entire year. And after that, I was so disgusted to be an American that I moved to Marrakesh and lived in the Medina for a year.
To Africa. That was your first time in Africa?
My only time in Africa, North Africa.
And what happened? You didn't like it? You came back to USA?
I decided I liked indoor plumbing and hot and cold running water. After a year in the Medina, I needed to come back to the States.
Okay. And when you came back, that's when you found reggae music?
Here's something that's going to be fun for you to translate, Marco. There was an Australian gonzo journalist named Michael Thomas who wrote an article in June of 1973 in Rolling Stone. In fact, I bought the first issue of Rolling Stone the day before I went to Nam and subscribed immediately. So Hernan has seen an entire collection of Rolling Stone, a 53-year collection from Volume 1, Number 1. Whoa. in the Reggae Library. So let's see. So the article became a book called Babylon on a Thin Wire. And the man who wrote it was a poet. And this is what he said. Reggae music crawls into your bloodstream like some vampire amoeba from the psychic rapids of Upper Niger consciousness.
Wow.
Let me hear you try that one, Marco.
It's impossible. It's impossible.
Él cuenta, vamos a hacer un pequeño que dice,
Sí.
le estoy preguntando, bueno, nos contó todo el viaje a Vietnam, todo lo que pasó. Cuando él vuelve, cómo conoce el reggae, dice que lee en una revista, Rolling Stone, dice que tiene desde la primer Rolling Stone hasta la última, tiene 50 y pico de años de revista de Rolling Stone. Y en una de esas, lee un artículo de un escritor llamado Michael Thomas, que escribe, was it The Wild Side of Paradise, right? The article.
Wild Side of Paradise, exactly.
Lee una nota que se llama El lado salvaje del paraíso, y hablaba de Jamaica y del reggae. Y en donde él lee que la música reggae se te mete en las venas como una ameba de vampiro de los rápidos psíquicos del Upper Niger, es como del río de Nigeria de la conciencia. Something like that. que cuando, what happened?
I don't know what that means, but I gotta find this right now. And I went out and I bought a used copy of Catch a Fire, the one that opens like the Zippo lighter. And my life changed forever. And the following night, I saw The Harder They Come in a little tiny theater in Berkeley, which held 40 people. And when the chalice scene came on, you know, the midnight chalice, everybody smoking, everybody in the movie theater lit a joint, and you couldn't see the screen for all the smoke. And I bought the Harder They Come soundtrack on the way home that night. My life changed from that moment forward. Everything I found about reggae fills 7 rooms of the house.
7. Siete cuartos.
These are 8 huge drawers of Bob Marley clippings. Nothing but Bob Marley clippings in there. What am I pointing at? No, here. These drawers here. And then these are tapes. Some of the VHS tapes. There's about 2,000 hours of tapes. And then there's 3 big cabinets here. And each of those drawers has 210 cassettes in them. And there's 7 rooms in the house that Camel will tell you are filled floor to ceiling. There's about 14,000 hours of tapes. And 30,000 flyers. The flyers are over here in these cabinets here. People send me flyers from all over the world.
Okay.
And I'm still getting
some from Argentina.
I got some from a very generous friend of mine in Argentina. So now I have an Argentinian section, thanks to John Camel.
Roger, and what is the most precious treasures you have there for you?
I got this out to show you.
Okay.
This is an envelope.
Sí, un sobre.
Signed by Haile Selassie.
Wow.
And it was postmarked at the UN on the very day he made the war speech to the UN. And you see the official logo from the Imperial Palace.
Yes.
And this was part of my exhibition at the Queen Mary.
And how you get that? It was a letter to you? How you acquired it?
I had to come up with $1,000 cash overnight. And I used to do a one-man show called Poetry for People Who Hate Poetry.
Okay.
I did that for 11 years all over the world. I even had a television show in Saigon on Sundays reading poetry to the combat troops. And my favorite poet, the only dead guy I performed, was E.E. Cummings. And he was the man who said, love is the every only God. And I had a really fine collection of first editions autographed by Cummings that I bought from his estate when he died. And they were very, very precious, very important to me. But I had a chance to get a historically significant item. Bob considered War to be his best song, his most important statement. And to have an envelope signed by Haile Selassie, postmarked on the day he made the war speech to the UN, topped my E.E. Cummings first editions. So I sold all those first editions to get 1,000 cash and get the Selassie envelope.
In what year did this happen? You buy it? Do you remember?
Yeah.
Were you able to show it to Bob?
Oh, no. I didn't get it till like 1995 or 6. It was in the exhibition at the Queen Mary. It was one of the major pieces in the exhibition. And the other thing that I have on the wall right next to it was reproduced. This is the catalog for the Queen Mary exhibition. They took 6,000 things out of the house and framed them. And the catalog has about 1,600, about a quarter of what was in the exhibition. And this is the poster that was signed by Bob.
Whoa.
And ultimately 41 of the people closest to him. And when I had loaned it years ago to the Grammy Museum, they insured it for $75,000.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So that poster is in the Grammy Museum.
It was. It was an exhibition, a short-term exhibition. But it will go to the museum that we're hoping to build in Montego Bay. Those will be two of the key pieces in the museum. Yeah.
Now,
Hernan, Don Camel, you went all through my house when you were here. What struck you as the most interesting things? I mean, obviously those two are part of it, but what else?
Well, the hat from Joe Higgs, the bedroom tape, and the first vinyl from Wailers. The one that is signed by Peter Tosh, Scatalites.
So there's Joe Higgs in his famous red beret, and here it is. This is the beret that Joe wore all the time.
Incredible.
Very, very good friend. We got to know each other because he lived here for almost 20 years.
Whoa.
He was a difficult person too. He was a difficult person too. He always had his peculiar ideas about things. Jamaica's motto is "Out of many, we are one," and that's also America's motto, "E pluribus unum." But Joe took a different attitude toward it. He says that's not what that means. It means that they went to every country around the world and they found the one black man and they took him out of there and brought him to Jamaica. Out of many, we are one. I'd like to hear that translated.
Claro, él dice que la frase principal del gobierno de Jamaica y de Estados Unidos es de muchos somos uno, pero que Joe Higgs decía que eso no significaba la unidad. Lo que decía era que habían sacado al único hombre negro de África y lo habían traído a Jamaica. Esa era su interpretación de la idea. Que Joe Higgs era una persona que tenía una idea peculiar de las cosas. Bueno, digamos que Joe Higgs es el primer profesor que tiene los Wailers y muchos cantantes en Trenchtown. Joe Higgs, why wasn't he recognized the way he should have if he was like a teacher to many? What would you say that you met him, Roger?
Oh, I knew him very well. He was like a brother to me. Teacher. He was very black. You look at Bob. Bob has white features, you know, in certain lights he looks like a leprechaun. His father was white. Bob had a charismatic personality. Joe had a tremendous chip on his shoulder. He felt he should have been a huge star, and he should have. but a lot of things conspired against that. And part of it was his own personal attitude. He wrote great music. He wrote Stepping Razor, even though everybody thought Peter wrote it. Joe wrote it. Don't you watch my size? Joe was about 5'6". I'm dangerous. That's not a line a 6'4" man writes. You know, you better watch my size would be Peter's better line.
Did Peter recognize that to him, the copyright?
He was forced to by the Minister of Culture, Babsy Grange, who insisted he sign a release saying that he was not the writer of that song. Because Joe wrote it in the mid-'60s. Everybody in Jamaica knew that. And I think he wrote it for the festival competition. So I think Joe got about $18,000 in past royalties for that song. And after Peter admitted that it was Joe's song, he got all the royalties afterwards that song made. Yeah.
Because Joe never introduced the Wailers to Coxsone. He had trouble. Joe and Coxsone were...
Yeah, they weren't talking at that point. He had, well, I mean, that's the interesting part of the book. One of the interesting parts is where Seco talks about how he brought them. And, you know, trying to nail down when did they make Simmer Down? Was it the next day? Was it 2 weeks later? Was it months later? There are so many different opinions of people who were right there in the room together at the same time. And the memories are vastly different. I don't trust Coxsone's memory because he was drunk a lot. I think Seco might be closer to the truth, and also Beverly Kelso, you know, because she was recruited, according to her, the night before they recorded it. It was Cherry Green who was rehearsing with the Wailers all those years before. And nobody ever talks about Cherry Green. Yeah, so my book is a way of correcting the historic record and giving credit where credit is properly due. Took me 20 years to get Beverly and Cherry to talk to me.
Whoa.
And Cherry died shortly after, so thank God we got her story. I've got about 9 hours of raw tapes of both of them.
And did Cherry and Beverly get paid royalties for the early Wailer? Never?
They got a dress.
Solo un vestido. They got a dress. Incredible. And
do you think... Dale, Marco.
No, I was thinking about your relationship with Bob Marley. Because we don't have the lucky to talk with a lot of people that meet him, that talk to him, and that have a relationship. We talk with Siggy, with Sedela, but it's not the same talking to a friend of Bob. Can you tell us how you meet him, how he was in with the people, okay. The real one, the not the star up in the sky and in the shows, the real one, like I don't know.
Well, I met him initially in '78 in Santa Cruz, California, briefly, but I really got to know him in '79. I spent 2 weeks on the road with him, and in '78 I was taken backstage before the show by Junior Marvin, the lead guitarist. And we went into the dressing room, and there were 4 huge, like, cafeteria tables put together to make a gigantic table. And everybody was at least this far from everybody else. And each of the Wailers had a mound, a little mountain of herb, and an individual pack of rolling papers sitting in front of them. Nobody was saying anything to anybody else. And I had that poster that I showed you that was being given out by somebody in line because Bob was playing 3 nights later in Berkeley. And so Junior said, "Why don't you ask Bob to sign your poster?" Go, "Oh, yeah, okay, yeah." I mean, I was speechless, you know. And he took me around the table to Bob, and Bob he was so into the ites, as the Jamaicans say. He was in the red, man. He was gone. and his eyes were all bloodshot. And he kind of looked up. And I said, Bob, are you going to do Waiting in Vain tonight? And he says, and he could never do it live because the I3 wouldn't sing it behind him because they thought it was about Cindy Breakspeare. Okay. So his greatest love song never got sung live, I think, except once in Montreal or Berlin. So a year later, I had just started the Reggae Beat show with my partner, Hank Holmes. We were on the air for about 6 weeks when Island Records called us up and said, would you mind going on the road for 2 weeks with Bob Marley? Twisted a little harder. And so we did. And I found him to be a man without any pretensions. I saw him in so many different situations, backstage, on stage, in the apartment he was renting in Hollywood, walking down the street. He was open to people. And he treated everyone with tremendous respect. I remember the last time I saw him was in the Roxy, little club on Sunset Strip, and he spent the first couple of hours playing all the instruments himself. And the first hour, he kept singing something over and over and over again that I'd never heard before about redemption. He gave away almost all his money. Colin Leslie, I talk about it in the book. Colin Leslie, his business manager, used to be in the room with him when all these people would line up to beg money from him. And one day a guy came and said he wanted to start a coconut oil business. And Bob wrote him a big check right away. And when he left, Colin said, Bob, why did you do that? And Bob said, oh, man, I always wanted to be in the oil business. And he liked to laugh. He had a good sense of humor. But I remember Pipe, the lead singer of the Wailing Souls, Winston Pipe Matthews, went to him one day in 1976 when Bob had broken through in Europe and it was obvious he was going to be a superstar. And Bob said, hey, Pipe, what you doing? What you doing these days? And Pipe said, nothing much, just chilling. And Bob said, in these times? Just put him on the spot right away. How can you be chilling? How can you not be engaged every second of your life when the whole future of the world is at stake? Wake up, go out there and fight. That's the kind of guy Bob was.
Wow. Well, I think you. I don't know. I am speechless because it's so huge. I'm so engaged with this book, reading it, and it's incredible talking to you. And a la gente que está mirando, en un ratito vamos a sortear uno. We are going to send away one for the who are participating, and it's incredible. And you start this book, the idea of this book, when it started? When you started with the idea, let's make a book with the oral history of Bob Marley. How was? Somebody tell you, hey, you have a lot of records, you have to make a book. How it was?
Well, it's my 7th book about reggae and Marley. And I really feel that my contribution to history when I'm gone will be that book and this book, which is the definitive discography of Bunny, Bob, and Peter. Everything they ever did, with all the stories. This is like a college textbook. This is what you need. And it's the only discography, true discography, that has ever been done for a Jamaican artist in history. The only one to this day. And that's what I'm leaving the world. And it's the basis of the 47 years of research that I've devoted to Bob and the history of reggae. When something excites me, I love to turn my friends onto it. And when I heard Bob and Peter and Jimmy and Joe and Ross Michael and Alton Ellis, I wanted everybody I loved to know about this. And to this day, I'm still a fan. I'm not an expert. I hate that term expert. I am far from an expert. There's so many more people who know so much more about reggae than I do. But I'm a fan, and I'm obsessed. And I want to share that obsession with everybody who's willing to listen. And I can't tell you what a joy it's been for me to talk to you and through you to talk to our friends in Argentina. And I hope someday I could bring my Life of Bob Marley show to Argentina.
Please.
And get to know a whole lot more of the people there who love Bob Marley like I do. And Hernan, meeting you and Mrs. Camel was such a joy for Mary and me, and I can't wait to welcome you back when all this pandemic nonsense is settled. So please stay safe, stay healthy, and one love to all of you. Thank you so very, very much for having me here today.
We are not finishing the interview.
You have to go?
No.
You have to go?
You have to go?
No, I don't have to. I thought we only had an hour.
No.
Hold on.
Hold on, we are starting.
I take it all back.
Mira, estaría bueno que Camel, can you tell us when did you talk to Roger for the first time? When did you think that he was going to be the perfect person to dedicate lines for this book? Tell us a little, Camel, por favor, contanos cómo fue tu conexión con Roger.
Mientras pongo a cargar el celular, ahí voy contando. Bueno, Roger lo contacté en el momento que estaba terminando el disco. Dije, quien debe hacer este prólogo es el que está a la altura, ¿no?, de hacer el prólogo de este disco es Roger Steffens. Así que ahí fue el primer momento en que lo contacté y le conté, ¿no?, sobre el disco, se lo mandé, lo escuchó.
Ahí se nota que enchufó el celular,
¿no?,
y ahí falla.
Del disco. Ahí puse el teléfono a cargar. Y bueno, así fue como nos conocimos, ¿no?, cuando le mandé el disco, la tapa, y que dijo, bueno, esto es una locura. Y es más, Roger es uno de los culpables de que el disco se haya entrado a los Grammys. No entrado, pero uno de los agitadores que dijo, che, Hernán, este disco es un disco como para los Grammys, me dice. No sé si vas a ganar, pero me dice, este es un disco que rankea ahí. Me dice, este disco lo tenés que presentar en los Grammys, porque es un gran disco este. Y así fue que el disco se presentó a los Grammys, y bueno, tal cual como él lo dijo, quedó el álbum nominado, y ahí fue que tuve que ir a Los Ángeles, ¿no?, por la ceremonia de los Grammys, y ahí nos conocimos personalmente. Así que fue como muy loca toda la historia, ¿no?
Well, Roger, he's saying that in a way, you writing in this album and you saying to him that this was a great works, you were guilty of the Grammy nominating in some way.
Thank you. I wish it were true.
Así que
it's a brilliant collection. There's all killer, no filler, as my friend Duppy Doug Went always says. That's the perfect example of all killer, no filler.
All killer, no filler. Todo mata, no hay nada de relleno.
Every cut counts. Yeah.
You know, Roger, that we are going to release soon the last Toots video clip. from the song to you, from the final battle. And it was difficult to film Toots for the video clip because he doesn't record video clips. And when I'm going to film him recording, he said, "No, I'm not. I didn't do video clips, but every song will have a video clip, Toots, and it is not going to be a video clip exclusive from you. All the musicians that play in the song will be featured. Well, okay. When I finish recording, I will make a playback so you can film me. And well, it's going to be released, and it's the last video clip from Toots."
It's funny because the clips that are released now from the album that was just put out are animations.
Yes.
I wonder.
Yeah.
2 days ago,
So
they
you
launched the song with Bob Marley. 2 or 3 days ago, they launched that song.
Hey,
Of Toots.
got to be tough. Warning, and Three Little Birds. All cartoon. The only real footage is Camel. The final
Yeah.
part.
Yes. Real. The real thing.
You make your country proud.
Yes, a lot.
The world, the whole humanity.
Reggae world.
And now it's coming the dub battle, and it's going to be epic because it reunites all the originators of dub. It will be featuring Lee Perry, scientist Matt Professor, King Shami, Dennis Bobel, and also 2 unreleased songs, one from Sly and Robbie and one from Ruth Radix from the 70s, dubbed by King Tubby.
Wow.
Wow.
And Bunny Lee make another dub.
Anotame un
So-
vinilo.
So everyone will be dubbing in the dub battle.
But
I'll
then
have
you
to get some more pay and listen to it.
It is a battle. The cover art is a battle that happened in the space. If you put the dub battle over the cover of the final battle, is the continuation.
All
Okay.
right. Oh, wonderful.
Space.
Who's the artist who made the cover?
The same artist that he's called Ojo Rojo. He's from Slovenia.
Ojo, es esloveno. Mira.
Sí. From
Ojo Rojo.
Slovenia. Ojo Rojo.
All right.
What-
Very impressive.
When is the launch? ¿Cuándo lo lanzan, Camel?
Well, it will be released. I believe that the first song will be released in November. La primera canción va a salir en noviembre, si todo va bien. Estoy esperando el arte, se le rompió al artista la computadora cuando lo estaba terminando.
the same thing that happened to Roger. Computer.
And in December, the second song, January the 3rd, February the 4th, and in March, the whole album.
Okay. Bien.
But wait, it's 3 albums, right? Because it's the final battle, the dub battle, and then the DJ battle.
Yes. The third one will be the cultural battle. In that album will be featured different style that used in Jamaica, like the DJ style, the one rhythm style, and also that 2 songs unreleased from Sly and Robbie and Ruth Radix, dubbed by King Tubby, will be voiced by Don Carlos and Wailing Soul,
Wow.
creating new songs.
Bravo. I can't wait. Yeah.
So we are putting all together.
Qué lindo.
Fantastic.
Incredible.
Roger, when you
Yeah.
met Don Camel, you think this is a crazy fan like me? What do you think about Don Camel?
how the hell down at the bottom of the end of the world did somebody get such a precise and full and joy-filled knowledge of Jamaican music? It just blew me away. And I think you should be very, very fortunate that he's still living there.
Yes, we are.
Oh, just, that's what reggae does. A friend of mine in Holland is doing a book that'll be out soon called Reggae Nation. And it is about people like you guys in different countries all over the world who have adopted basically a reggae lifestyle. Reggae is the movement of Jah people. Reggae is the soundtrack to the revolution of consciousness. And we are all living proof that Bob Marley's work will never die.
Yes.
He's been gone almost 40 years now. And he still sells more reggae records than anybody alive.
Incredible. And returning to the book and your history, and how was meeting Peter Tosh also? He was like in the book is like a hard person.
A hard person?
Yes, like strengths, like he's an extremist compared to Bob. I was reading today when they talk about peace. The peace from Bob Marley was very different from the peace that was looking Peter.
Yeah. Peter was a hard ass. Peter put a lot of people off because he was so stern. And I've always said the reason he wore those glasses with the side pieces on, the dark glasses, was so you couldn't see the twinkle in his eye, because he was often playing with people, even though he talked in a deep voice and he was so stern, he frightened people. He wanted to. He wanted to frighten Babylon. I got into an argument with Bunny Wailer about that. In fact, he thought I was putting Peter down. I said, no. Peter was angry, and he had a right to be angry. He was almost beaten to death on several occasions. In fact, one point they thought they'd killed him and just left him bleeding on the floor of the jail cell. So Peter didn't just talk the talk; he walked the walk as well. But he was also one of the funniest people I ever met. I'll tell you the herb story.
Come on.
Peter and Bob had a fantastic publicist, a Liverpool Irishman named Charlie Comer. And Charlie just loved Peter. And in 1979, in September of 79, he called me from New York and he says, Roger, man, Peter's in your town and he's got no herb. Can you help him out? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, Charlie, I've just come back from a big pot plantation in Santa Cruz. And the guy gave me 2 colas from 16-foot plants.
Whoa.
Like 5-meter tall plant. And the colas were like this.
Huge.
And they were like grapefruit round. And so we found out what hotel he was in. And Charlie said he'd call Peter and tell him we were coming. So my wife, Mary, put a beautiful wrapping around the cola and a red, gold, and green ribbon. And off we go to the hotel and knock on the door. And Peter's got a chain on the door. And he opens the door and he looks through the crack in the door. And I'm standing there with this giant thing, 2 hands worth, all wrapped up. And what that? And I said, well, it's a gift to you from all the herbalists of Southern California, Bush Doctor. So he takes the chain off, grabs me, grabs Mary, pulls us in, slams the door, puts the chain back on, all in about 5 seconds. He rips a little of the paper and he sees what's inside. He takes the ribbon off, He checks it out, breaks a piece off, and he smells it, looks down the barrel of it. Then he turns to me with this thing filling 2 hands, and he says, "Shaw, take a whole lot more than this to get my propeller spinning." But he didn't give it back. He didn't give it back.
No, he smoked it all the way.
He is the bush doctor. I wonder what Peter would have thought of rapé. Am I saying it right, Camel?
Rapé.
Yeah.
I was introduced to the joys of this wonderful condiment. And we haven't forgotten it. It was quite delightful.
Well,
I think Peter enjoyed it too. But Peter was often a lot of fun to be around. He called the Queen of England Queen Ear Liza bitch. And the judge was the Grudge. And his producer was his reducer. He played in San Francisco, California, United States of Asatica. Because there's nothing merry about America. It's Asatica.
So
I think he had it.
He was a choker. He was always choking all around.
Yeah, when the camera wasn't on.
Okay. And
Yeah.
then he was imposed, like he transformed to the Peter Tosh. We know that you are a friend, you were a friend of him, but the public didn't know him like that.
No, they saw him as the harsh warrior. But he had a very human side too. Yeah, he was a very empathetic man. I loved Peter. We were good friends. He used to call me 3 or 4 times a year from various parts of the world because he didn't have any of his own records. They'd all been begged off or stolen. And he called me a few days before he was murdered, and he wanted me to send him a tape of Here Comes the Judge, that Joe Gibbs single he did around 1970 with all the terrible villains of Jamaican history, the slave drivers. And he wanted to redo the song for the next album after No Nuclear War, which had just come out. And he wanted to change the names in Here Comes the Judge to contemporary villains in the world, in Jamaica. I often wonder what those names would have been.
Okay, and you get to send him that song.
I did. I don't know if it ever got to him because he was killed.
Okay, and Bunny Wailer. How is Bunny Wailer? I read a lot in the book that he's like I don't know how to say it, but it seemed that he's more spiritual or something like that. Like I don't know how to say it, but how was he? How is he? He's the only one alive.
Well, my feelings for Bunny have changed radically because he so mistreated my writing partner, Leroy Jody Pearson, and me. Leroy and I did the discography book, based a lot on the 64 hours of interviews we did with Bunny in 1990, locked in a hotel room for 3 weeks with him in Kingston. And after working on that book for 10 years, he wouldn't even read the chapters, the sample chapters that we sent him. At one point he said, "Why don't you come to Miami and read them to me?"
What?
I said, "What are you, 3 years old?" And he was eventually, I think, forced to abandon the project because of some threats he got from people I don't want to name.
Okay.
And now he's too sick to even, engage in that project again. He's had a couple of strokes and he's basically dying. There were a lot of things that were revealed through our research with Bunny that were very disturbing. All the promoters who sent him huge advances for shows he never did. One poor guy up in Montreal, was burned twice in a row, and I'm talking for, $25,000 a piece.
A lot of money.
And then the idea that Dreamland, one of his signature songs, every version of Dreamland you see attributed to N.O. Livingston, which is Bunny Wailer's name, Neville O'Reilly Livingston. Bunny didn't write that song. An American named Al Johnson wrote it and released it in America. And Coxon told me personally that he gave that record to Bunny to cover. It was called My Dream Island. So Bunny dropped the IS off the record and called it My Dream Land. And he's taken this guy's royalties for 50 years.
Okay.
So all the times Bunny is claiming about all the people who've ripped off the Wailers and what terrible human beings they are, he's done the same thing to this guy Al Johnson. And it's not right. So, going out in the holy robes and walking around like the Bishop of Rasta and stuff.
Well, you are mad with...
Look, I want to show you something.
Yes, please. Bueno, estamos con Roger Steffens, el escritor de esta bomba, de este libro hermoso que estoy leyendo y aprendiendo un montón, Camel. Después te lo presto, si no lo tenés. Porque te digo
I got mine.
Ah, okay. What is
You see
that?
that?
Yes.
It's Bunny Wailer's book.
Wow. Se me quedó.
That's Bunny Wailer's book.
Bunny's Wailer book. Yes.
1,800 pages.
1800 páginas.
Look at this. Look at this.
All that work.
This is 10 years of my life in this project. And it's sitting in a box, gathering dust in the archive.
And you think you could launch it in the future, or it will be dying there in that box? I'm 78 years of age. This is my life's work for Bob Marley, available to the public in 6 different languages. Yes.
It took me 15 years to knock that one to the ground. I don't have the strength or the interest to put that book together. History will have it. It'll end up in an archive somewhere, and all these people who were never alive when Bunny, Bob, and Peter were among us will have it. But all the people who could appreciate that material better than anyone, the people who remember physically Bob and Peter and Bunny, won't have it. And that to me is a crime against history. Bunny's going to have to live with that as part of his reputation.
Okay, and did you meet...
If I sound bitter, it's because I am.
Yes.
10 years. That's 10 years of my life.
A lot of time. We are working in Pelagatos, this show, for 15 years, so I know what is working for 10, and you can get it out to the world. Did you meet the 3 together, Bunny, Bob, and Peter? Did you see them together? Never.
No. I did see Bob and Peter together the one time that Peter joined him after he broke up with the group. And that was in Burbank, California in '78 when he came out for an encore in Bob's concert that night. The following day, Peter was opening for the Rolling Stones in Anaheim. And he showed up without Bob knowing he was there. And when Bob came out for the encore, he sang Get Up, Stand Up. And just at the part of the song where Peter would come in on the record, Bob looks up, and across the stage, striding, comes Peter Tosh, reaching for the microphone, and comes in right on key, right on cue, and joins Bob in singing Get Up, Stand Up. And the audience had no idea who he was. I did. I kept screaming, "That's Peter Tosh!" But it was so exciting. And then afterwards, we saw him coming out of the dressing room, and I went up to talk to him, and I said, Peter, you know, I want you to know a lot of people are going to Anaheim tomorrow, and they don't care about the Rolling Stones. They're going there to see you, man. And a couple of years later, I interviewed him on my television show, and that's up on on YouTube. And I said, what do you remember about that night? Did Bob know you were coming? And he said, no. I said, why'd you do it? He said, well, his spirit just moved me. And I said, what else do you remember about that night? He says, well, afterwards, I remember I clapped Bob's hand. No, Bob claps my hand, and he says, boy, the Pope feel that one. And 3 days later, the Pope died.
Whoa.
I don't know if that's true. I should look that up, but that's what Peter said that night. It's on film.
he killed the Pope, more or less.
Yeah.
Well, what can you tell you more about this book? Because it has so much story. I was shocked about how the mother of Bob treats Bob when he was a young. Can you tell us about that? Because you know more than us.
Well, first of all, he was a half-breed. So black people didn't care for him because he was going to destroy the bloodlines of any girl that he got with, because he had white blood in him. And white people didn't want anything to do with him either. And when his mother went to live with Bunny Wailer's father in Kingston and brought Bob with her, he wasn't even allowed to sleep in the house. He slept on the dirt underneath the house, under the foundation of the house. And there were times that several people, including Seco and Joe Higgs, told me that his own mother denied that she was his mother.
Yes, that shocked me a lot reading the book. It was like, I don't know, Marley family sends another message, like, so this was opened my eyes.
What I wanted to do with the first part of the book was to show people what Bob transcended, what awful situations he was faced with from the time he was abandoned by his father at the age of 5 and left to fend for himself in Kingston for... I've never been able to nail the exact period. It could have been as long as 2 years.
Whoa.
But it was at least a year. And he's 5-6 years of age on the streets of Kingston, sent to live with an old woman who's too sick to really take care of him. So he's taking care of her. And that was left out completely from the Marley documentary film that the Marley family produced. And if you're talking about an international icon and how he became the sensitive, empathetic man he truly was, that's the key fact in his life. That gave him an empathy for the sufferers, people who were in this situation by virtue of their birth. They had no control over growing up in Trench Town or growing up with no home, wandering the streets. And that informed the lyrics that he wrote. All the songs on Natty Dread, you know, those are songs of sufferation. And it became his duty to explain that kind of life to people who had no consciousness of what poverty is like and what it can lead to. And he could have turned very bad very quickly, like a lot of other people in Trenchtown did, because nobody would hire you if you were from Trenchtown. So how are you going to make a living? How are you going to feed your kids? And he didn't. Bob wasn't a saint, but so much of what he did was saintly. I keep saying that to people. The fact that he gave away almost all his money when he was alive. He didn't have a Mercedes. He had a BMW at one point, but everybody gave him such grief for it that he gave it away and bought a Jeep You know? And he bought the BMW because he said it meant Bob Marley and the Wailers. Yeah. Yeah, you're talking about someone who was so different from the way, I hate to say it, but the way the black superstars today, you know, what are they doing with their money? It's all gold bling and mansions and stuff. Bob didn't even have a house of his own, ever. He bought houses for dozens of other people. He slept on a cot until a year and a half before his death, when some of the women in his life bought him a bed. You know, we're not going to see his like again. He came from nothing, and he made his life a work of art. I think we've put poor Don Camel to sleep.
No. I was listening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Checking his eyelids for holes. It's late there, isn't it?
It's 9 and a half.
Half past 9.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
But I'm with chicken because
Chicken goose pimples.
yes, because of this part of the history of Marley. It's like the Marley family hide it down because for the common public it's difficult to access to that information.
Well, I wasn't writing the myth. You know, years ago at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Chris Blackwell was asked why he hadn't bought my archives yet. And as part of his answer, he says, I think Roger Steffens is more responsible than anybody else in the world for preserving the myth of Bob Marley, which most people would have said, oh, what a great compliment. Thanks so much, Chris. And I really resent what he said, because I'm not promoting a myth. You don't need to make something up about this man. Everything that he did was larger than life, and all you have to do is tell the simple truth about him. You don't have to make up any myths about him. And that's why I wrote that book. This is a book of truths as seen by people who were in the room with him, who grew up with him, who were related to him, who worked for him, who loved him. And you can make up your own mind when you see all those testimonies. I tried to stand back from it. I tried not to tell anybody what to think.
Yes,
in my commentary. I tried to be neutral.
We talk about that with Mighty, that it was very neutral, your parts, when you make the Las Uniones. Yes.
Yeah.
And Bob, he was aware of his mission, and that's why his commitment was so strong, right?
He was a prophet, and there's no doubt in my mind he was a prophet. And there are very few people in this age who are prophets. He was psychic. And I've talked to Dion Wilson and Ibis Pitts and Bob's mother about the event in the summer of 1969, that Woodstock summer, when Bob visited all summer long with his mother in Delaware. And he told his young friends, Ibis and Dion, that he was going to die at 36. He was 24 at the time. Now, why is a 24-year-old even thinking about death? And he died at 36. He knew it. And right at the beginning of the book, in my introduction, I write about Jeffrey Phillips, the novelist from Jamaica, who met Bob, I think, in 1975 at the University of the West Indies in Kingston. And they sat down to talk, and all of a sudden, Bob is telling Gregory his life story. This is a guy he never met before in his life. And he's telling him things that even this guy's mother didn't know. And where does that gift come from? That's something else. And when he was 3.5 years of age, he was reading the local constable's palms up in 9 Mile. And telling another woman in the village things about her private life. And both of them went to Bob's mother and said, hey, there's something going on with this kid. You got to keep an eye out on him. This is not a normal kid. And his mother confirmed to me that back in 1969, Ibis and Dion came to her that day and said, you know what Bob just told us? He's going to die at 36. And I have her on video confirming that to me. So there's 3 witnesses to that statement, and I believe it's true.
Now you also telling the story 3 injuries that Bob had in the same foot.
Yeah.
And the third one was the final one that got him sick in the end.
The first one was when he was 11 years of age up in 9 Mile, and he was playing in some rough rocks, and his mother had forbidden him to go there. And he cut his foot so badly, and he couldn't tell his mother about it because she'd whip him. So finally, he couldn't walk anymore, and she discovered the foot and made some kind of country remedy, a poultice of leaves and herbs and stuff, and put it on there. So that was the first real injury to that foot. The second was when he had a serious case of writer's block after he came back in 1966 from Delaware to start Wailer Solem Records. He hit a block. And so he quit the business for a while. He went back to 9 Mile. And he worked in the fields with Rita. And he always worked barefoot. And he had a hoe that had been sharpened like a razor. And he left it up, which you should never do. And he stepped back on it and sliced his foot almost in half. And he continued to work. He put some deep, dark dirt on it and wrapped his shirt around that. And he worked every day for weeks after that in that diminished capacity. He didn't want to show any weakness to his brethren. And then, of course, the third time was when the French journalist accidentally spiked him. But we must not confuse this with the fact that he had melanoma cancer in that foot, because melanoma does not arise from injuries. Okay. There's not a doctor on earth who will tell you that it arises from injuries.
It's very clear in the book. All that is very clear in the book. And you talk with a cousin of Marley family from the white side.
Yeah, we opened the book. First quote is Christopher Marley, his cousin, who lived around the corner from Tufkong on Marley Street. Although it was the construction family Marley, the father's family, after which that street was named. And Christopher talks about the fact that the Marley family had at least one case of melanoma and many cases of skin cancer. So if he was meant to die at 36, so be it. Now,
there's one thing that I heard you saying. How come in 1977 everybody learned, you even learned that he was with cancer? How come the people close to him, the band, didn't know?
That either they're lying or they forgot. That makes no sense to me at all. I was just a Marley fan. I was just a kid who loved him. Well, I was a kid. I was 35 years old. But I had friends in New York who were Jamaicans who were connected to Marley. And they called me up in the summer of 1977 and they said, Bob's got cancer. So from that point forward, I knew that. And
do you think Bob was like, I'm going to push through until the last day, like, don't worry about me?
Yeah, I mean, he had that graft from his thigh onto the foot when they cut out part of the melanoma on the toe. And I think he felt that had cured it. But he didn't go back, as Cindy told me, he didn't go back for the regular checkups that he was supposed to have. Oh, I don't need to go to that. There was a certain inevitability in him. And it explains why he worked so very, very hard, so tirelessly, all those late years of his life, because he had a short time left. His mother told me he slept 2 or 3 hours a night. And he was never left alone. I mean, I have regrets about my time with Bob. And my greatest regret comes from being a fan. I carried around a bag of all my Bob Marley records for 2 weeks, waiting for a little 5-minute opportunity when he wasn't being hit on or he was resting and not to be disturbed, where I could ask him to sign my records. And that never happened. He did sign the poster. He signed a big newspaper article. And later I found I got a record that was autographed by him. But I only have 3 autographs by him. I saw an autographed record yesterday on eBay. You know how much they were asking for it?
10,000.
11,600 pounds.
Whoa.
What's that? That's like $14,000.
And here,
But why?
you don't imagine
we-
how much money is here. It's like you buy a boat with that money and a car.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how big a star Marley is, you know. And I there's a quote that I end all my Life of Bob Marley multimedia presentations with, and it was by John Pirellis, who's the chief pop critic for the New York Times, and he's an eloquent writer. I love his stuff. He's a poet. And in 1996, the New York Times Sunday magazine celebrated its 100th anniversary of publication, and they asked each of their critics in whatever field they were, dance, drama, to choose one work of art that they felt convinced would last 100 years into the future. And Pirellis chose Burnin', the last album by Bunny, Bob, and Peter. And he wrote these words. He said, Bob Marley became the voice of third world pain and resistance, the sufferer in the concrete jungle who would not be denied forever. Outsiders everywhere heard his voice as their own. If he could make himself heard, so could they, without compromise. In 2096, when the former third world has overrun and colonized the former superpowers, Bob Marley will be commemorated as a saint.
What a memory you have.
Well, you talk about burning and you talk about the Wailers. I don't know if you talked in the time I was gone, but the relationship between Bunny, Peter, and Bob it was never broken. Even though they split, they were still good friends, right?
Bunny and Bob were good friends. Peter had a lot of jealousy. He called Bob Marley the white boy. He said Chris Blackwell only wanted to promote Bob Marley because he was a white boy. And the last 2 years of Bob's life, Peter never picked up the phone once to say, how are you doing, Bob? Anything I can do to help? What's going on, my brother? Didn't talk to Bob the last 2 years of his life. That does not speak well for Peter. You know, I love all 3 of them. I got to, you know, Peter and I were really close. Bunny, even closer. And I respect them all. But they're not saints. They're human beings with flaws. And that's a problem when you're a biographer. And it was, you know, I left things out of my book. I didn't want to be seen as the white man trying to destroy someone's reputation.
Okay. Heavy things stay out of the book. Some heavy things of the history between them, it's out of the book. It's not here.
I'm not going to tell you that.
Yeah. There's one thing that I always wanted to know. It's the Confrontation album, the last Bob Marley and the Wailers official works. Did Bob ever hear, when did he record such beautiful songs? And I know that Family Man was in charge of the production, but did he ever hear the final result, Bobby?
I think there were probably a couple of those songs that were finished beforehand. Yeah, because that's all stuff they were doing to break in the studio at Tough Gong in the late 70s. almost all that stuff dates to the late 70s. Some of it's rehearsal tapes that they did a lot of overdubbing on. Others were pretty complete already.
Do you think that, do you know, I mean, if Bob approved the songs that make that album, it's a great album, Confrontation. What do you think of Confrontation?
I think it's nothing to be ashamed of. A lot of posthumous works are thrown together just to make money. This was something that they took care of. And they used the Wailers band on it. They got Family Man involved. And there's so much more stuff that remains in the cans to this day that they could be releasing. And I don't understand why.
Material of Bob Marley that is not released. It's recorded but not released.
Yeah.
And there in the Reggae Archive you have a lot of material also recorded from Bob or shows. What do you have? Can you tell us?
Oh God, you look at that cabinet there, that's the Wailers cabinet, and there's rehearsals in there. There's Carly Barrett's last rehearsal the night before he was murdered. There's Bunny gave us a tape of specials he had made for sound systems over some of his most famous songs, but they're for Kilimanjaro and other systems in Jamaica. I mean, that's an album all by itself. Nobody's ever heard that. I've never played it on the radio for anybody. He promised, he gave it to me if I promised, never to make any copies or play it on the air. So there's stuff like that. There's private conversations with people that we're both going to have to be dead before the researchers can listen to them. I'm in no hurry to go.
Tell us about Reggae Beat. You've been 25 years doing radio, writing. There was a magazine too. What can you share with us that we are doing? We're almost 15, reaching 16 years in Pelagatos.
Yeah.
But what can you tell us about the experience with Reggae Beat, the magazine, the TV show?
Well, it's exactly what you're doing. It's a bunch of fans who realize there's a need that has to be filled. We started, Hank Holmes and I met in 78. He had 8,000 Jamaican records in 1978 without ever leaving Los Angeles in his life.
Whoa.
I tell the story of it in the introduction to the discography book. And he did it for almost nothing, for pennies. It's an incredible story. It's too long to tell, but that's the gist of it. And we started the radio show. It took us a year to find a radio station because nobody wanted to play it on commercial radio, and the non-commercial stations couldn't cope with it. We almost got on the real left-wing station here, Pacifica Radio, but after we did 3 audition shows that got great response, they said, well, we can't in good conscience put you on the radio playing black music because you're white. So as a last resort, we went to this little tiny station in a junior high school classroom with great plans to grow, and started the Reggae Beat. And it became the most popular non-commercial show in all of Southern California. And we made so much money in the annual fundraisers that recently they moved into a $38 million station.
Wow.
And we built that station. We were the major source of funding for 10 years on that station. And that started in 1979. 1980, we started a television show with a Trinidadian drummer named Chili Charles. And his son is Ben Harper's drummer in The Innocent Criminals now. And Chili was a neighbor, and he was ready with his camera whenever anybody would come to see the archives or show up at the radio station. And we did that. It cost him over $100,000 to buy airtime on a cable TV show station. And we did about 200 episodes of a show called LA Reggae. And some of that stuff is up on the internet now. And then in 1982, a woman I had met at Sunsplash 81, named Cece Smith, who came down to the station on Sundays to help us answer the phones and get our act together. We decided to start a newsletter because we were starting to get bands coming to LA, and we wanted to notify people in advance so they could buy tickets and we could get more promoters involved in bringing acts here. And that developed into the Reggae Beat magazine, and we published our playlists in it. And then as I began doing African broadcasts as well on a show called Morning Goes Makossa, I'm the guy who turned Paul Simon on to Ladysmith Black Mambazo, by the way. We changed it to the Reggae and African Beat, and then eventually it was just called The Beat. It ran for 29 years.
Whoa.
At one point, we had circulation of over 40,000 because the Tower Records, which had stores all over the world, bought thousands of copies each month and distributed them worldwide. And then when, the digital age came in and nobody was buying records anymore, all the record companies that were our advertisers went out of business, so the magazine folded in 2009. But these were all attempts to spread the gospel of reggae music. I never got paid for the radio show. I never got paid for the television show. I never got paid for the magazine. And I've been often accused of being a white man ripping off black culture. I don't know if you guys ever hear things like that, but
No, I never read that about you.
No,
but I imagine that could have happened. Yes.
Yeah. And then we got a syndicated show. Blackwell hired me in 1982 to be the national promotions director for reggae and African music at Island Records. So I promoted Confrontation. King Sunny Ade was my project. Black Uhuru, Michael Smith. And he financed the first 13 shows of a syndicated show called The Island Hour. And then he just pulled the funding. So Hank and I decided to continue it as Reggae Beat International. And, we charged the stations $10 an episode, but we had to buy the cassette tapes. We had to buy duplicating machines. We had to pay the postage. At the end of each month, we were on 130 stations, 130 stations all over the world. At the end of each month, we made $87.50 each.
You get rich.
Another white man ripping off black people, yeah.
There you go. There's one funny thing that maybe you can, your relationship with Jamaican, going to Jamaica to Sunsplash. Tell us about the time you introduced Big Youth.
Are any of you guys Catholics?
Well, I was baptized, but I don't practice church or anything.
What about you guys?
No, yes, I'm Baptist, but I don't believe in anything right now.
Well, I am a recovering Catholic. And Big Youth and I are old buddies. I met him in '76 in Kingston.
I saw the picture.
Right after I had my pocket picked. And we've been friends ever since. And I emceed at 3 different Sunsplashes in the 80s, and I always had my choice of who to bring on. So it was Bob Andy, it was Johnny Osborne, it was Roots people. And then I had a chance to bring Big Youth on. And it was the first show at the Bob Marley Center. And they had like 60,000 people there that night. And I brought Big Youth on at sunrise in front of this. You couldn't see the end of the crowd. It was enormous. It was the birth of the Bob Marley Center. And I can't remember precisely what I said, but I remember I said, "Are you ready for the man who brought us Ace 90 Skank? Yeah! Are you ready for the man who sang 10-1? Yay! Are you ready for the man who said Pope Paul dropped dead?" And the place just exploded. Boom, the Pope, kill the Pope. It was, as an ex-Catholic, it was one of the proudest, happiest moments of my entire life. I'm going to be struck dead now.
Amazing, amazing. I don't know if I mean, we've been 2 hours talking. We haven't talked about the other side in your life, your other passion that we said we were gonna get into, and it's the photography and the counterculture of acid, LSD. I know you were a Timothy Leary friend. Can you tell us a little about the Family Acid project? It's 50 years of photographs that your daughter and your son put online.
Well, Hernan has seen the closet. You know, I had 40,000 slides sitting in the closet there, gathering dust. My quote photography career, which I didn't know I had, started basically in Saigon when I began this refugee campaign. And I sent letters to a town in Wisconsin where I had read poetry in all the schools. So all the kids knew me. And I sent a letter to the editor of the local paper in Racine, Wisconsin, and which is just north of Kenosha, where the Black murder happened. And they published my letter asking for some food and clothing for the people who were living in front of my barracks in sewer pipes. And I'd go out in the morning and there'd be a corpse on the sidewalk in front of my barracks. I mean, it was a Tet offense. It was hideous. And they published my letter along with an editorial urging support from the schools. And three weeks later, 2 5-ton trucks pulled into my compound in Saigon with my mail. All these little packages, all addressed to me with food and clothing and dolls and stuff. So I went into the colonel. I was the colonel's typist at that point. And I said, sir, you got to come out and check this out. There's something outside you got to see. I'm very busy, Private. I said, no, you've got to see this. So he goes out, and they had these huge steel containers, you know, those international shipping containers. And they're both open, and there's these boxes just spilling out of them with my name on them all. And he says, what the hell's that, Private? I said, well, it's my mail, sir. And I think it's refugee supplies for my friends, and I'm going to have to send it all back. What are you talking about? I said, well, I'm so busy typing your letters all day, sir. I promised I would distribute them personally so it doesn't end up on the black market. And I don't have time to do that. Come into my office. He promoted me to corporal, or Spec 4, on the spot, gave me my own Quonset hut, and told me I could go anywhere in Vietnam from the DMZ down to the Delta, work on any project I thought was worthwhile, as long as I took pictures.
Wow.
So he could prove that this work had been done. And he gave me free film and developing for the next 2 years. So when my year was up and I could go back to the States and serve out the rest of my enlistment, I chose to stay in Vietnam because I was doing positive work. And I got a 5-month early out because of that. So I was in Vietnam for almost 26 months and never fired a shot. But I came home with 10,000 frames, pictures. And I used that as part of a talk, an anti-war talk I gave back and forth across America for the entire year of 1970. Kent State, Jackson State murders, the invasion of Cambodia, the strikes in the schools and stuff. So, all the slides that I took, I put in sheets and catalog them and throw them in the closet. And in 2013, our son, Devin Marley, decided he was going to digitize all of them. And it took him a year.
Four.
And he sat, what are we looking at now? Back there. He sat in the corner back there on the other side of the desk and spent a year digitizing all 40,000. And then our daughter, Kate, said, why don't I start an Instagram? And I'm so, as Hernan saw, I am so untechnical. Techno-igno, I call myself. And I said, what's Instagram? And she explained it. And so I said, yeah, sure, start Instagram. And she called it the Family Acid. And in the 80s, there was a television show in America called The Waltons, and it was about an idealized American family in the South in the Depression. And John Ritter was in it, and he became a really good friend of mine over the years. And it was a show everybody knew, The Waltons. It was the ideal American family, right? So she called our website the Family Acid, she said, because all her friends told her when she was growing up, they told her our family was like the Waltons on acid. and in fact, Mary and I, my wife Mary and I, met on an acid trip in a pygmy forest in Mendocino under a total eclipse of the moon back in 1975. And we've been together since that day. So acid has played a role. And Timothy Leary became a friend. I've done 4 books now. Katie put together the first volume of The Family Acid, which got just phenomenal write-ups all over the world and led to museum shows, Paris Photo and Art Basel. I mean, I had no idea I was a photographer. And the latest book is this big 3-pounder called The Family Acid California. And the little epigram at the beginning here is from Timothy Leary, who described Southern California as the growing edge of the human species, where the migrants and the mutants and the future people come, the end point of terrestrial migration. In other words, we've colonized the world and ended up here in LA, and from here on, it's all outer space.
Surfing directly out of space.
How is the Instagram? How is the name of
the Instagram? Instagram now has 54,000 followers.
A lot.
54,000 people have kind of discovered the Instagram. And we've got 4, Family Acid Jamaica, a little zine of San Francisco pictures, and then Family Acid California. And we're working on our 5th one now. Katie and I are working on the Family Acid Vietnam, which will not just be photographs, but will be artifacts that I brought home, Viet Cong propaganda leaflets, and lots of weird things, and excerpts from letters home that I wrote to my folks, and excerpts from a manuscript, 400-page book I wrote when I came back from Vietnam that never got published because nobody wanted to read another word about Vietnam in the 70s. Right. So that's been sitting in a box for 40 years. No, 50 years. 50 years.
A lot.
Yeah.
Well,
so
we could contact us about thanks to that Instagram, the Acid Family. We talked to your daughter, and we could make this interview. That is
possible. Yes.
Oh, you found? Oh, okay. Oh, cool. That's cool.
Yes. Yeah. We were talking with Marcos, and we're like, we have to talk to Roger. So we're like, let's write to him on the Instagram, and we got your mail.
Oh, that's great.
But one thing that I was talking to Marcos, how important is your family and your wife in everything you have done? Like we see that you are like a really strong unit in every project.
Hey, Mary.
Mary.
She's ignoring me.
Lore.
He went to the store.
Lore.
Bueno, estamos hablando con Roger Steffens, el escritor de este librazo, que vamos a sortear en un ratito nomás, obviamente cuando él esté presente. Y ahora fue a llamar a la mujer, Mary, y parece que Camel también. Nos dejaron solos.
Che, digámosle que the cover
is Mary.
Hey, how are you, Mary?
Good. How are you guys?
Marco, there's our nan. Hey, and Mr.
Hello, Mary.
Hola, Mary. Hello, Roger. Hola.
Hola.
The question
Nuestra familia.
how important is the family to me? So I want you to
To you.
Well, to
I hope it's
being
important.
yeah, well, she's my editor.
Yeah.
Really trust her.
I really love editing Roger's work because you have to hardly do anything.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so
Mary, it's a
you guys
pleasure.
have
We
a wonderful time. Sorry.
that's we wanted to we was asking Roger the importance. We feel that family is so important in his work, and he called you right away.
Yeah. Well, we're very lucky. We have a tight family. I think there's a lot of love, and Roger is a person who is effusive in handing out love to others. So it comes back in the door often, not lately because of COVID, but in other ways, like with you guys.
We haven't done a tour of the archive in 7 months.
Wow.
In fact, I was worried about his tour so much that I offered to be a person that would go on the tour for him, so he could do it.
Remind me of all the things I forgot. But we used to get 2 or 3 people a week who wanted to come and see the archives from all over the world.
And people do want to, but we just don't feel we can do it yet.
Doors are closed.
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't have enough air circulation.
But we're a tight-knit family, and the kids are both photographers and writers, and I just think Katie just turned 40 and she got a master's degree in digital archiving, and she's on the faculty of San Jose State now. So it took, and they're both super into music. Devin's an electronic musician and a real fine kid. And so it's
how many times did you both go to Jamaica? More than 30 times?
Yeah.
For I haven't been as many times. I'm looking forward to it. I love the food of Jamaica, and it's having ackee and fresh mango and banana like you never would ever eat. And oranges, green oranges that taste sweeter than any orange. It's just it's a wonderful place. Anyway, I'm cooking on the stove, and I have to get back upstairs. I had to burn.
Quick, Mary, who is your favorite Jamaican reggae artist?
Now I'm forgetting his name.
Justin Hines?
Yes, thank you.
Wow,
Justin
mighty.
I love him.
You met him, right?
Yeah, he came here.
Yes, we did.
His whole family came here.
And then oh God, how am I forgetting the Rolling Stone guy now? He came.
Keith Richard.
Keith Richard came over because of Justin Hines, because he was doing an honoring him. Sorry,
yes,
my brain is
they did the Wingless Angels project.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna go cook.
Thank you, Mary.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
Bueno, ahora que Camel nos presente a su compañera.
Camel,
acá está Lorena. Bueno, nos hicimos muy amigos con Roger y Mary cuando estuvimos allá y estuvimos un día en la casa y después nos invitaron a cenar otro día.
Qué lindo.
Así que bueno, acá está Lore.
I agree with everything you said, except I don't know a word of it.
Hola, Roger.
Hola,
Roger. Hello.
We had so much fun when you were here. That was really great. You got to come back.
Yes, soon with the dog battle.
Yes.
We go with you, Camel.
Pero Camel, ¿Lorena te acompañó en todo el viaje a Jamaica también o ahí te fuiste solo?
No, en Los Ángeles. Sí, Jamaica solo.
Rough.
Sí.
Te fuiste solo. Está bien. Pero Lorena lo acompañaste a Camel a los Grammy.
Sí. A los Grammys y a todo lo que hizo antes también y después.
Bien,
en Brasil.
lindo.
Fuiste con él al Bahía Fest.
No, pero que estuvimos un tiempito en...
Sí,
en
antes de los Grammys estuvimos ahí haciendo varias cosas en Los Ángeles. Sí.
Bien.
Sí. Después ella se volvió para acá y yo arranqué para Jamaica.
Qué bien,
Sí, ya
Qué
en Jamaica es demasiado. Con estar uno solo ya es bastante peso. De cuidarse uno solo. Sí.
So I haven't cut my hair since you were here.
Mira,
Yeah.
I'm not going to cut it till Trump is gone.
La remera me gusta.
well, how things are going, you might end up with long dreadlocks, Roger.
God forbid.
Hey, ¿ya lo sortearon?
No, I'm going to
Roger.
make the...
This is a picture you took too, right? When did you take this picture, Roger?
November 24th, 1979, in the dressing room of the San Diego Sports Arena.
I am making the sorteo, I am making
We're going to see who wins the book.
Who wins the book? ¿Quién se gana el libro, cargando ahí?
Vamos a hacer el sorteo.
No hay bolillero. ¡Qué modernidad!
Hay
Live and direct.
bolillero de apps, sorteos gratuitas, es recomendable. Bueno, parece que va a tardar un rato, así que se va el tanto que contar, historia oral de Bob Marley. Está cargando las bolillas, así es, ahí va. Así que un lujazo este libro. It's a pleasure talking to you, Roger. It was you shine our reggae world with this book.
I want Roger, we from Pelagatos, we want you to work with us. I mean, we don't want to bother you, but we want to have a constant conversation for our show. Anytime you have time, of course, and maybe we find something for you to share, because Argentina needs more information from the roots era, from all the original era. We love. That's why it's so important for us to be in touch with you.
Ahí están todos los comentarios, todos los comentarios. Opciones, un ganador, confirmar, comenzar la cuenta regresiva. Vamos a saber quién se gana. Puede ser en España, en México o en Argentina. Y el ganador es Rodrigo García Arte. Satisfy My Soul era su canción preferida, así que @rodrigo.garcia.arte se gana el libro de Roger Steffens, con la bendición de Rogers, with the blessing of Rogers.
So let me suggest something. Find out his snail mail address and send it to me, and I will get a sticker and autograph the book to him, and he can put the sticker in the book.
Yes, great.
Rodrigo and Rogelio.
Acaba de decir Roger que quiere el correo del ganador porque le va a mandar una calcomanía autografiada con dedicatoria.
Increíble. Roger, thank you very much for this 2 hours and 20 minutes talking. We can talk all day night.
I think it is a heartical relationship, as they say in Jamaica. My friends and my new friends, I love you all, and I'll do this again anytime you want. This is going to be a nice thing to continue, and I'll send you some pictures that you can use when you edit all this together, too. Send you some archival pictures. And Hernan probably has a whole lot, too, that you shot here, right?
What was it?
Si tenés
pictures in the archives, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so, feel free to use those, too.
Okay. Roger, I have a last question. We were talking to Mighty before. Maybe this is the most interview that we prepare the most, because we read an entire book, imagine. And we were wondering, where is a photo of Roger with Bob? We want to see a photo de Roger with Bob. Please.
La fue a buscar porque contale a la gente lo que acabas de decir.
Bueno, sí, Roger es amigo de Bob y todo, pero queríamos ver una foto de Roger con Bob.
when I was with Bob, I didn't want to be grabbing at him all the time. I didn't want to, everybody else was trying to get a little piece of Bob. And Bob came to LA every year. And that's probably why I kept the records in the bag, because we were friends now. Next year when he comes back, I'll get him to sign the records. And I didn't want to, hey, Bob, come take a picture with me. I'll put my arm around you and we'll. I didn't want to do any of that. And I don't have any pictures except one. And it's blurry. And it was from a man who toured occasionally with the Wailers when they played on the East Coast in Boston. And he took a shot of me in the dressing room. And that's it. There's Bob and me. And that's just before I took the picture that's on the cover of the book. So it's one of my most prized possessions, as blurry as it is. It's me and Bob, and we're locked in conversation.
Yes. And who are the others? Is a family man one?
There's pictures I took of Bob and family together. Yeah, they've been on album covers and stuff.
But who is there in that picture? It's you, Bobby, Tyrone, family man?
Yeah, Fams is that. Let's see there. That Fams has the tam, so that's Bob and Fams, and I don't know who the other two are in there. I really don't. But I treasure that.
There's something else that Marcos always asks about. I don't know if you asked him. How many years have you been a marijuana smoker and advocate for the legalized? In California, it's legal already, but it's more than 50?
I dropped acid 2 years before I ever smoked a joint. I don't smoke. I mean, I never smoked tobacco. But when I got to Vietnam, you have to break the tension, because there was no front line in Vietnam. It was everywhere. And when I got there, there was somebody called Saigon Sally, who was a Viet Cong woman who would drive on a motorcycle behind a guy, and they'd look for sidewalk cafes where GIs were eating, and she'd toss grenades into the cafe. So you could go at any minute. On Ho Chi Minh's birthday in May of '68, they dropped 3 rockets on my block and burned 400 houses to the ground. So there was constant tension 24/7, or else you weren't paying attention. And I needed something to cut the tension. And I'm not a drinker. I'm not into alcohol. I like beer, but I don't drink. And I don't want to get drunk. And if you're drunk, you stay drunk. If somebody starts shooting at you and you had a joint, you can straighten out pretty quickly.
Yes.
So I had to teach myself how to smoke. And for 2 or 3 weeks, every time I got 2 or 3 hits, I threw up. And my buddies used to take bets. How many hits can Roger hold before he throws up? So it took me about 3 weeks to not get sick. And it was the best thing I ever did, because I've been stoned ever since. And that was November of 1967. So 53 years now. But there was one break. There was like a 14-month break where I was totally straight, because they had this DARE program in the schools, and our kids were in grade school, and the cops would come and say, if your parents smoked, you have to turn them into the police. And they thought they were going to have to send me and Mary to jail. So I couldn't do that to the kids. So I just stopped. But I broke the fast because I had a chance to smoke Paul McCartney's personal stash.
Whoa.
And I was born the day before Paul. I'm 1 day older than Paul. And it was great. It was wonderful. And so I've been back off the wagon for 14 months, and then on the wagon ever since then.
But wait, is it true that Bunny Wailer's ganja is the strongest you ever smoked?
It was among the strongest, but the poor Leroy. Leroy and I we are heavy smokers. And Leroy is a blues man, Leroy Pearson. And when Mississippi Fred McDowell died, he left his guitars to Leroy, the white guy. And Leroy can put it away. But the last day we were with Bunny, he brought us a bag of little bitty buds. And we looked at him, because every day he would bring us a different bud. And we said, "Oh boy, did you run out of the good stuff, Bunny?" And he just looked at us. "This is short bud goat shit." "Really? What's it like?" "Roll one up and you tell me." So we each rolled some short bud goat shit. And Leroy just was sitting in the chair like this, and we had to be at the airport at 6 o'clock in the morning. And when Leroy walked into the airport, they just grabbed him and took him into customs.
We're still stoned.
He was beyond stoned. He was gone. He was gone. And I smoked 3 of them. That was the night that Bunny Wailer told Roger Steffens that he had never seen a white man who could smoke herb like me.
Whoa.
I'm thinking of having that put on a t-shirt.
Yeah, that's the title.
And we just harvested. You saw the backyard, Camel. We just harvested our crop. And so we got some Echo Park shit face that's really nice.
Echo Park shit face, it's called.
Yeah, that's what we grow.
Nice. I want to go to LA and visit the Reggae Archive. Mighty, we have to.
It's legal here. We can grow legally.
Yes, we don't. We are working on that. We're trying.
Please, work hard.
Have you been talking to Bunny lately? Since he got better, a long time you talked to Bunny, or
he's not better? He's worse.
Really? What can he's doing bad? Oh.
Justo hablamos cuando vos no estabas, Mighty. Se puso picante.
Perdón, I'm sorry. I missed that part. Okay.
No, I haven't talked to Bunny in years. Ever since he abandoned the project without telling us, without even having the decency to say he wasn't going to finish the book. I had to hear about it from his band leader and from Family Man. No, I don't want to talk to him.
Okay.
Roger, let's finish with a smile.
Yeah.
Please, can you give us a message? It was really hard for us to interview an expert, because interviewer, that we can say that you are an expert. So what advice can you give us next time? Give you the data, and what can you tell us for everybody who is into the reggae business, to call it in a way, in this passion?
Just stay with your dreams. Stay with the thing that makes you bubble inside, and share it with an honest, open heart, and listen. The best part of being an interviewer is listening. Don't be in a hurry to pull a trump and interview yourself while you're supposed to be interviewing the other person. Keep open to the magic of the moment. The best interviews of my life have gone places I never thought they would go, just because of something somebody said, maybe offhandedly even. Listen is as important as the right questions.
Yes.
Yeah. And you guys are great at it. I mean, I've never done an interview this long. It's 2.5 hours now, and I feel like we just began.
Once with a great artist from Argentina, Guillermo Bonetto, he told me the same advice. Listen listen, pay attention, because the journalist a lot of times they go after his questions and they are not listening what the artist is telling about.
See, Charlie Comer, the publicist I told you about, who's in the book, the old Irishman, he would prep his people when Peter was going into an interview. He said, "You're here to sell something. You're here to sell your new project, your new movie, your new book, your new record. And no matter what they ask you, you turn that into what you're there to do. You take that question and you find a way to focus on the record that's coming out. And if they don't follow up on what you're saying, they're going to look stupid. So you're there to sell something, sell it."
Yes, I remember that part of the book. Roger, can I ask you one favor? Can you present yourself and send regards to Pelagatos?
How do you mean? I'm not
Like,
sure
hi, I'm Roger Steffens. I'm sending regards to Pelagatos and whatever.
Like
you
a
want.
jingle.
Like a jingle.
Like jingle.
Gatos is cats, right?
Yes, it's
Yes.
a shaved
What's
cat.
our-
Shaved cat. Like shaved cat. Shave it like.
Oh,
But-
shaved
Yes,
cats.
but it's two words that significant. ¿Cómo se dice? They mean another thing. Together they mean another thing. It's like a homeless, someone that live out of the society, like a Rasta in some way.
Well, brothers and sisters, this is your American shaved cat saying how lucky you are to have these cats in your backyard, because they know what they're talking about and they do it with grace and a sense of humor and a lot of love. So muy gracias, mucho gracias. I don't know, I don't speak any Spanish. A lot of thanks to all three of you cats and kittens, and I hope we can continue this for a long time to come in the future. This has been one of the great joys of the entire quarantine. You got me out of myself. One love to all of you watching, and keep listening to reggae music, because it's the music that guides you to a proper understanding of why we're all here.
Do you think?
One love, Roger.
One love. Yeah, thank you very much. Do you think that with COVID, maybe in this era, reggae music rise again to be the flag of the fight against this all badness? Me complica explicarme un poquito.
I think the world needs reggae now more than they've ever needed it. If I were on the air, I'd open my show next Sunday with Hypocrites and Parasites in honor of the political situation. That music is going to be the anthems for as long as people are resisting and need songs of solace to heal the wounds. It's message music. It's not folly business. It's music that guides you to a higher understanding, and therefore it is timeless. It will last forever. Music is the vibration of the universe, and we ourselves are vibration. Hazrat Inayat Khan said that 100 years ago, and he's absolutely right. He said in the ancient times, it was the prophets who were the musicians. And I think that's true in our time, although they're few and far between. And we realize now, as we look back at the 20th century, why Bob stood above everyone. Dylan, John Lennon, anybody else you want to throw up there. Bob is superior.
Yes.
We miss you, Bob.
We miss you. Yes. Thank you very much, Roger, Camel, Mighty.
Unas palabras de Camel. Camel,
Sí.
maybe some final words.
Bueno, gracias por la invitación. y muy contento de verlo a Roger, que esté bien, a Mary, y espero pronto estar por allá de nuevo, de visita. Ojalá con The Dub Battle.
I think I got most of that. I hope to see you here soon, too. One love, everyone.
One love, Roger. Thank you very much.
One love.
See you soon.
God bless you, Roger.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Y despedimos entonces a Roger y a todo el equipo pelagatiense. Le agradecemos a todos por estar ahí. 2 horas 36 minutos de entrevista con Roger Steffens, el escritor de esta obra de arte, Tanto que contar, de Bob Marley, que regalamos uno, sorteamos uno a través de nuestro Instagram. Ya salió el ganador. Gracias a Malpaso y a Mecha por todo. Y nos estamos viendo. Ahí están todavía ellos. Thank you very much for this book, Roger. It's a pleasure to read it.
I'm so glad I got it out of my system. More time.
More time. Ahí se fue. Mighty. Bueno, un lujazo, increíble.
Tremendo. Bueno, tenemos un trabajo importante por hacer para subtitular todo estas 2 horas y media. Con mucho gusto vamos a hacerlo. Yo sé
con tiempo.
Que es una misión. Estamos en este momento terminando de ensamblar la entrevista con Barrington Levy. Ayer tuvimos a Manu Digital.
Qué bien estuvo Manu Digital.
Marley. Y bueno, felicitaciones al ganador del libro, que encima de llevarse el libro va a recibir una calcomanía autografiada de Roger.
Me dio un poco de envidia, te digo la verdad.
Ahora se la vamos a manguear, ¿qué te pensás?
Che, mandale un mail agradeciéndole y todo después, porfa. Así, porque la verdad que la buena onda, la predisposición, hasta había comentarios de Boris Bilbraut, mandando saludos, un montón de gente viendo la nota.
Dale, comentá un poquito qué estaba pasando ahí en las redes mientras...
Y había gente de Cuba, estaba Boris Bilbraut, decía Mr. Stephen, good to see you. Damon, what a home, decía good evening Roja from Supai. Quiero el libro, dice Jaime. Gran pregunta de Mighty sobre Joseph Hill, dice Christian Borlenghi. Bueno, un montón de saludos porque no le dimos ni pelota a los saludos, les pido disculpas. Pero bueno, Cecilia, Fer Pala, que decía, no, me fui 1 hora, volví y siguen entrevistándolo. Así que, bueno, qué sé
yo. Negro,
no le podía cortar.
Negro, vos tenés 15 años con Pelagatos.
Es la nota más eterna.
¿Es la más larga?
Sí.
¿Es tu récord hoy?
Y puede ser. Igual todo el trabajo lo hizo Roger. Nosotros hacíamos las paredes, ¿viste? Es como Messi. Messi mete los goles, los demás se la devuelven.
Y seguramente a vos también te pasó, pero yo me quedé con la mitad de las anotaciones. O sea, tengo...
Y me quedaron algunas.
Por eso le tiré como el centro a ver, y ya nos dio el ok. Estaría buenísimo una vez cada 3 meses, una vez cada 2 meses, hacer una intervención de 1 horita sobre algún tema específico.
Claro, sí, planearlo un poco más. ¿No? Como ir para un lado. Vamos a hablar de la discografía de Peter Tosh, por ejemplo, o de Bunny White, o de algo así. Darle una vuelta y hacer un live con él, porque es una Biblia abierta. Nadie sabe como él. Acá está Santi Palazzo, que capaz es el que más sabe. Él sabe más que todo el mundo junto, parece, ¿no? No le gusta
pero él lo dijo, viste, que dijo, no me gusta que me digan experto. Él dijo, yo soy un fanático, un fan del reggae. Él dijo, mucha gente sabe más que yo. Lo que él tiene es un amor por la música.
Infernal, sí, increíble.
Como nosotros.
Sí, un gladiador. Así que estoy súper contento y bueno, nos despedimos. Me voy a cenar, que tengo una lija que no te cuento.
Un saludo a todo el equipo Pelagatos, que sin ellos nada de esto es posible, porque somos un equipo.
Fernando, Pelado, Gizzy, Diego, Tonga, Gian, bueno, y nosotros dos, y toda la gente que ha colaborado y que está colaborando. Y la verdad que es un lujazo hablar con este muchacho.
A los que estuvieron, a los que están y a los que van a llegar.
Sí. Así que, Mighty, nos vemos la próxima, Así
gracias, negro.
Termina esto.
Pelagatos y radio, sonido positivo.